To introduce you to some of the new features in Photoshop CS5, we're going to go ahead and build this postcard. In the first tutorial, we're going to clean up the photographic background, and in the second, we'll build this 3D text. Let's get started by opening our original image through the new Mini Bridge panel. This opens up something like Bridge only directly inside of Photoshop, so it's a lot more convenient instead of jumping out to another app. Well, I'll scale my thumbnails down, find my starting image, and go ahead and open it. Next, I'm going to save it into a folder I create on my desktop called the Playground, which is a place where it's easy to find what I need, and I can go ahead and clean everything up very quickly and easily when I'm done. Now, the first thing I want to do is correct my geometric distortion. See how these buildings look sort of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa due to a wide-angle optical aberration, or distortion. I'm going to go down to my Layers menu and duplicate the original layer by dragging it to my new Layers icon and turn off the visibility of the original. Now I want to go to my Lens correction, which has been moved to the main filter menu and given some new smarts. In CS5, it's going to look at the EXIF data that's stored by the camera with a picture, and it's going to look at the camera model and lens. And if it finds it in the database, it can automatically correct for things like this geometric distortions, fringing or chromatic aberration, or vignetting. Now in this case, it didn't find a profile, so I'll have to do it by hand. You can download software from the Adobe site that allows you to build your own lens and camera combinations. I'm going to turn off the auto scale image. What this does is if I make corrections, it'll automatically zoom in the image. But I want to keep as much of it as I can, so I'll turn that off and then go to Custom. Next, I'm going to go down to my vertical perspective and start dragging it to see if I can get rid of some of that leaning. That looks pretty good, but I want to make sure that it's really vertical. So I'm going to come down to the bottom, turn on my grid, and change it to a color that's a little bit easier to see, like a bright yellow. Using my alignment grid dragger, I can go ahead and move it right up on the edges of the buildings so I can see more precisely exactly what it's doing and fine-tune the adjustments a little more. And that looks a lot better. So I'll click OK to make the change, but you can see now I've got some empty pixels here. That auto scale would automatically have cropped the image so I wouldn't have empty pixels. But in this case I do, so I need to fill those. I'm going to go to my Magic Wand tool to select them. And now I'm going to go to the Edit menu and choose Fill, only using the new feature called Content-Aware Fill. By clicking OK, Photoshop is going to look around the picture and find pixels that might match that area that are empty and put them in automatically. And as you can see, it actually does a surprisingly good job, but not a perfect job as we see down here. I'm going to select my Zoom tool and come up and make sure that it's set to Scrubby Zoom. What this does is it allows me to click on a portion of the image, and by dragging left and right, it will continuously zoom in or zoom out if I drag to the left. Now, if you turn that off, you can still zoom in on an area by dragging a marquee selection. But I love this new Scrubby Zoom. It makes it so much easier to get right to where I want and exactly the magnification I need. And you can see here it did a pretty good job with some of the trees, but it covered up our circus fairground here. I want to cover that up as well, so I'm going to go to the Spot Healing brush and also make sure that it's content aware. Now, by stroking, I can go ahead and add new pixels to cover up the problem areas. Now, unlike the original plain Spot Healing brush, instead of just pulling pixels from the edge of the brush area, it actually looks at the image area around it and pulls pixels in from different patches. So you get a much more interesting and less obvious correction. So content-aware Spot Healing brush and fills really make your job a lot easier in the new CS5. And as we can see, in just a couple of moments and a couple of tools, we've done a lot of cleanup to our image. In the next tutorial, we'll build the 3D text.